What's up, goalies, and welcome back. I'm Matt, also known as Coach Jenks, and this is Jenkins Goaltending. In today's video, we're going to start with part one of a little development series to help you become a better skater, giving you techniques and tactics that you can employ on your own during your goalie sessions, your practices, and your games. We're going to touch on a few topics today, including your basic stance, your shuffles, your T-pushes, and then eventually we'll get to pivots as well, and we can add those into any one of these movements. Before we get started with any of the skating techniques, we want to make sure that our stance is a solid one. Everyone's stance is going to look slightly different from one another's, but we need to make sure that we understand it and we know why we're having a stance the way we do. There's different ways to do this. There's always tweaks and variations, especially as you get older, you learn to explore more and more about your stance. But I think one of the most important things is that you just find what's good for you. As with all my videos, I make suggestions, but I also want to make sure that you're making your own decisions based on what feels good and feels right. You need to be able to access all of your power. You need to be able to move efficiently, and you need to be what's called quiet in the net. We need to make it look like it's effortless. When we get into our goalie stance, we need to think of ourselves as an athlete. If you played any other sport, whether it be shortstop in baseball or if you're playing volleyball or soccer, you're never standing up straight and your posture is never very tall. You're always a little bit crouched down, and you want to make sure that you're able to generate power at the drop of a hat. If the puck moves quickly, we need to move with it, and any time spent waiting or generating power is time wasted for us. We need to be ready to go in any direction at any time. So having said that, we want to make sure that our stance is in a position where our knees are bent and we're going to have our posture angled just a little bit forward. Okay? So by bending our knees, we're bringing the weight distribution from the middle of our foot to the toe. We don't want to be on our toes where we're going to fall forward, and we don't want to be on our heels where we feel like we're going to fall backwards. We want to make sure that our weight is right on the ball of our foot, just like we would with any other sport, and we access that power as much as possible. Okay? As for the feet, we're going to have our knees bent, but we don't want our feet to spread out too wide because that will only lessen our knee bend and give us less power to push with our knees. So when we find that spot that we like with our feet, it should be just outside the shoulders or the hips. Some goalies, again, will have a little bit wider, a little bit narrower, depending on personal preferences. For me, it was always just outside the hips. That's where I felt most comfortable and where I felt most balanced, and I can move in any direction without having to generate that power and taking time to do so. If I have to move left, I'm able to move. If I have to move right, I'm able to move. If I have to go down, same thing. We're balanced, we're even, and we're making sure that we can go in any direction. Once we find what I like to call the power point of our stance, by finding the proper weight distribution on our foot and getting onto the balls of our feet, then we need to focus on our upper body. The stance should be a pretty quiet thing. When we're in our stance and we have to move, we don't want our upper body doing a whole lot of work unless we actually have to extend to make a save. So when we get into our stance, we want to get those feet in position, our weight forward just a little bit, and what we're going to do is we're going to change your posture to lean forward just a little bit. So I'll show you from the side here. If I use my stick as a guide, if I'm standing straight up, my stick goes straight up in the air. When I get into my stance and I bend my knees just a little bit, I also want my shoulders to pitch forward, right? We don't want that stick coming too far on like a 45-degree angle, but we do want it angled so it's facing down towards the puck. The closer I can bring my eyes and my shoulders towards that puck, that just means I'm going to be able to track it better and I'm going to be able to make reactions that happen in front of my body instead of to the side or behind where we can drop rebounds and get in trouble. So when we pitch our shoulders forward like this, now we want to bring our hands forward just a little bit as well. Again, we don't want to fully extend our arms. There's going to be a lot of personal preference on this one, but this is the basics. We don't want to fully extend our arms to go too far forward. We just want to have them relaxed, but in front of our body. So we need to be relaxed enough that when we face a shot, we're able to turn our glove or turn our blocker and make sure that we're directing rebounds or catching pucks properly. So one example of this is when I go into my stance, I'll show you a little drill I do with younger goalies, and that's just putting a stick across their glove and blocker, hanging on their elbows. So when they go into their stance and they start moving, whether it's a shuffle or a T-push or any type of movement, their hands shouldn't move enough to knock the stick off their hands. So when we do this, we find our balance point and we try to have quiet feet. When I move with a shuffle or T-push or anything, the stick shouldn't move. If the stick goes up and down, it means they're having to generate power by breaking their posture and moving up before coming back down. So the stick is a really good indicator, especially for younger goalies, to tell if the goalie is on balance or if they're really struggling with that so far. If our hands are too close to our hips or by our sides, the stick again will fall off. So if you get a goalie to butterfly and instantly their hands come down or towards their hips, the stick's going to fall off. We need to make sure their hands are always moving and reacting in front of our body. One final note on the stance, and I get this question a lot from parents of young goalies, is where should they hold their stick? Sometimes they're told to hold it right in the middle of their 5-hole. Others, they're told to hold it up or off the ice. And some are told to hold it with their blade of their stick on the ice. To me, it's personal preference and whatever works for you, as long as you're understanding why you're doing something and what the pros and the cons of doing that thing are. So for me, it's not so much about where you hold your stick. It's about being comfortable with the rest of your body. So when you do get into that stance, the priority should be filling holes in the net. A big problem that I see with young goalies is that they get into double coverage. Double coverage just basically means that if I take my blocker and I put it in front of my pad, I'm now covering one spot twice and leaving another open. So for me, especially when it comes to stick placement, as long as you're covering holes and you have good posture in your stance, your stick should fall generally into place. For me, that was always the blade of my stick on the ice and the heel slightly lifted. The minute I tried to bring my heel down, I felt like I was off balance and I didn't feel comfortable moving around the net. So again, just like anything else, I think it's about a comfort level and finding what works for you. Okay, goalies, so first drill we're going to do here is just a simple shuffle drill. I have 3 pucks in a straight line. We're not going to use the crease for this one. It's easier to teach in just a straight line before we get into pivots later in the video. So for this one, we're going to have to make sure that we get into our comfortable stance and we start on the middle puck. Whenever I'm in my comfortable stance, I want to make sure that both my toes or both my feet are facing up ice and facing that puck to get square. That allows my chest and belly button to line up, and I know I'm in the middle of my target. So one important note here is that when we shuffle, there shouldn't be a lot of movement in the upper body. So just like when we did the stick on the hands, okay, there's not a lot of rotation in this movement because it is so short. So we want to make sure we're keeping our shoulders up ice and square. We also want to make sure our feet are staying up ice, so we're not opening up that toe if we're going this way. We're keeping our toe facing this way, and we're just pushing just like you would in a stop. So for this one, when I start pushing, we get into our stance. We want to make sure we waste no energy trying to load up by bending that knee even more. We should be able to do this just from where we are. So we start here, shuffle over, and we set. So keeping in mind that we're always moving efficiently and with our hands ready to make a save, and that's your shuffle. The next movement we're going to perform is a T-push. So this is in a situation where the puck's moving a long distance or in a short amount of time. So with the T-push, we start the same way in our basic stance, except this time, instead of keeping both feet facing up, whichever direction we're going, our lead foot is going to open up to make that T. So basically, we're going to create that shape of a T, and we're going to drive through. So a couple really important things to note here is when we get into our stance, we're set and level. Just like when I had the stick here earlier, the stick shouldn't be moving up and down when I make this push. So when we make this push, we need to have a good knee bend with our general stance as it was. And when we look and follow the puck, because it's moving a longer distance, our eyes become really important. When we follow that puck, our shoulders are just going to angle towards it. And for this situation, we're not going very far, so we don't have to angle that far. But we need to make sure our eyes and shoulders are matching up with where the puck goes. And then we're using the knee bend that we already had in our stance, and that's going to drive us left. So when I open up, I'm just coming to a stop and again getting set with both feet facing up ice and facing the puck. In this situation, like I said, this is a straight line, so it's not, there's no pivots in it, so it's a little bit going to feel a little weird maybe. But when we get into the pivots later, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So now we're going to talk a little bit about pivoting. Pivoting is so crucial to goalies because almost every push we make around the entire rink will very rarely be in a completely straight line. We always have some degree, even if it's with a shuffle, where we have to change our angle of our feet to maintain how square we are. So in this drill, we just have 3 pucks set up, 1 in the middle and 2 on the angles facing the face-off dots. If you're doing this at home, I would set up the pucks a little bit further away because it's going to feel more natural than looking down on your feet. You want to try to create the situation that you're following a pass from the middle to the face-off dot or somewhere on that line. In this case, we're trying to get them on camera so you can see them. So we'll put them a little closer. A couple things with pivots is that we need to make sure that we're doing them super efficiently. And the way we do that is a little bit different than what you might be used to. So with a simple pivot, we would be in our stance and our feet would be perpendicular to the puck. So we want to make sure that when we pivot, we're turning this line to face the angle of the puck. That's the whole idea. So when you're a little bit younger, you might do that with a C-cut. So if I'm in my stance and I want to go to this puck, I might look to the puck and then I might C-cut with my outside leg, okay? Now one thing that this causes a little bit of trouble, or one way this causes a little bit of trouble, is that you might over-rotate. So when you do a C-cut, you don't have a ton of control over how far you're C-cutting, and it's really tough to stop yourself. So what you might get into is C-cutting, and then when you start pushing, you go deep into the crease and have to recover your depth. So it's really inefficient. We would be pushing in a simple push back and up. This happens to a ton of young goalies, and it's a big cause of not being able to be set by the time the shot comes. So the way we're going to teach it is a little bit different. When we look to the puck and our shoulders square up to it, that remains the same. So we're going to look, square up, but now what we're going to do is we're going to use the knee bend in our outside leg, and we're just going to do a small pivot with just our skate. So if you remember, the C-cut was this big noise where I'm squaring up and I'm taking that circle. On this one, we're just going to flip our foot a little bit. So when I look and turn, I'm just flipping that foot, and that's a lot more efficient. And I have full control over how far I pivot. So if I want to do a small pivot, I just look, turn, little pivot, and I go. If I want to do a big pivot, if I were going back to my glove side post, I look to the corner, turn, and then I'm flipping that foot and lifting this one just a little bit, or even just kind of gliding it along the ice, just to not take away any of your speed by doing a big C-cut. You're not just moving to move, you're moving to get set and square in as little time as possible, or whenever the puck dictates it. So having said that, when we make our pivots, we need to make sure that we know how far we're going. So the big thing I want to touch on here is just about our visual attachment, or our eyeballs. So just like when we're tracking pucks and we get our nose to the puck, we need to get our nose lined up to that puck as well. So again, if I'm going to my left, I need to make sure that if my target is over here and the puck's, up near the top of the circle, then my vision can't go anywhere but that puck. A lot of times I see mistakes where the puck will be on this angle, and in order to execute the T-push, the goalie turns his or her head completely to the left and then has to find the puck later on and get square. So again, it's just about efficiency. We want to make sure we're doing this as quick as possible and with as little mistakes as possible. As goalies, we kind of have to take shortcuts sometimes. Like I talked about before, using that big C-cut to come through the crease can be really simplified by going in a nice straight line. So now we're going to give you a great drill to put everything together, using your pivots with T-pushes and shuffles. So we're going to have 3 pucks set up. The outside 2 are a little closer together now. So these are not on the face-off dots anymore. They're more like, the top of the circle area. So they're nice and close. These can be adjusted for as, short or long as you feel is necessary. And all we're going to do is we're going to shuffle to one puck, shuffle back to the middle, and even the little shuffles involve pivots. So using the top of the crease as a guide, I get into my stance, and when I shuffle to my left, I have to get square and set to this puck so it runs right through the middle of my body. So if you notice, when I moved, even in that little short distance, my feet are on this line. When I shuffle over, my feet have now changed angles to get square to that puck. So all we're going to do is run through a couple of these. We're going to go to the short one and back to the post, and back up to the middle. When we go back to the post, we just need to really make sure that, like I said before with field of vision, behind the net is completely blind to me. So I need to make sure that I'm turning my body and I'm looking to the corner as a guide, and that'll take me right to my post. So now, given what you know about the stance, your shuffles, your T-pushes, and pivots, that should give you more than enough ammo to come up with hundreds of drills on your own. You can set these pucks up or any targets in any way you want, on a straight line, in the crease, on different angles, and you can work on your footwork as much as you want. As you move forward, you can add butterflies, you can add butterfly slides, power slides, reverse DH, whatever you want. This is the basics of how to create a drill, whether it be for yourself or for yourself as a goalie coach. So, given all that, I hope you guys learned something, and make sure to tune in next time as we go to part 2 in this development series. Thanks.